And I want to begin by thanking everyone for your participation on this committee. We'll have to determine at the end of our meeting if we need another meeting or not. It's very possible this could bring closure to this advisory committee at this point, if you are all comfortable with what we have to this point. I don't believe we have any new faces with us today, so we'll just jump right into the agenda. I wanted to share a number of things with you that just developed very recently. So the masks as sent by the state, let me stop sharing for a minute so you can enjoy seeing me here for a second. So I'm guessing you can all see me now. This is the mask that came from the state. They're white, they're fabric, and it's a stretchable, like a terry cloth type material. And so conforms to the face quite nicely. And we have 1,500 of these that arrived on Friday, and 3 of the no-touch thermometer, or the scan type thermometer. So wanted to share that with you.
Dr. Robert?
Yes, ma'am.
Do those masks come in different sizes?
They do not.
Oh.
It's one size. What I do know, though, I do on occasion see people either tying the little strap to shorten it up or using a little elastic to make it shorter.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the ear things that I'm concerned about, but the size of the face mask. If we would have a little kiddo use it, I know even the small, medium ones are kind of big on me. So that's why I'm thinking.
Yeah, I did notice you can do things like what I just did, fold it over to make it smaller, across the face. Because, I could see a little tiny face, that it maybe covers up too much. But so we have those now. So here's some information from Jed. I did update our PowerPoint. The CDC changed the guidelines for re-entry. It's still, if you've had COVID, 10 days, and now instead of 72 hours symptom-free with fever subsiding without medications, it's now 24 hours. So it went from 3 days down to 1 day. I believe that's the only guideline that would impact our PowerPoint. Rates continue high. Jed said that if September 1 looks like today, he would suggest all county schools have all staff and all students wear masks. He would suggest that for our plans. So another thing, we learned that in New London, they ordered 100 thermometers, and every principal's responsible for developing a plan to take everyone's temperature every day, adult and child. And that was up to the principal to come up with a plan for accomplishing that. As far as I know, New London's the only one doing that. That was not requested by Jed. That was just a community. Hold on, letting somebody in. It was just a community request. So let's see. The CDC says face coverings, and I will add this to the PowerPoint, it's not in there, should cover the nose, mouth, and be tight. Those are 3 criteria. But in terms of the covering, the type of material, or whether it's a neck gaiter or other type of thing, isn't relevant. It just should have the 3 criteria of cover the nose, cover the mouth, and fit tightly, no air gaps. They're now recommending for adults eye protection, face shields or goggle type glasses. If you already are a person who wears eyeglasses, that seems satisfactory. That's a recommendation for the adults working with children. Let's see. And then they've talked about re-entry, and we can talk about this a little bit more. They're suggesting right now, if you've had a positive student in a class, if the other students were not wearing a mask, then they would quarantine for 14 days. If they were wearing a mask, they could continue class. And that is contingent also on maintaining the physical distancing. So that's if you have a cohort and protocols are in place. So we're working on some of those details for the sake of consistency. ThedaCare is looking to work to get teachers listed as essential staff. They're not currently part of the critical infrastructure in the federal guideline, but they're working on that. They're also working to get a rapid test kit that people could do on their own that looks more like, as it was described to me, like a Q-tip type of thing, but a test that is simple enough that, you know, I could do my own, you know, would be simple like that. So they're trying to get that, and let's see. Let's see.
Can I add a few things while you're looking?
Sure. I think I'm almost to the end of my list, so you go ahead.
Okay. So again, what we're talking about, just because I've had a lot of questions about it, when you have someone that's in quarantine because they've been in contact with someone, that individual then would leave the classroom and stay home. The rest of the cohorts could continue school. They're a contact. They're not the positive index case. If there's a positive index case, then the whole rest of the classroom becomes contacts, cohort group, and they're all out. Now, again, then you're looking at the 14 days only from the last time the individual was in the classroom. So they test positive and you get called. Well, they may have tested on Friday. You don't get the result till Tuesday. So you're hearing on Tuesday that they were positive, but the last time they were in the classroom maybe was on Wednesday when they started to feel ill. So the cohort group would be quarantined for 2 weeks starting that previous Wednesday, not starting the Tuesday that you get the results. So if you kind of have to look at the scenario of the last time those kids were in contact with the individual. Okay, so it may not be as long as we think it's going to be. And then
So
even if that, go ahead.
Sorry, what if the teacher that has the positive test, or what if the person that has the positive test is the teacher who has come into contact with 90 students?
Okay, now the teacher who has come into contact, now they're going to also look at contacts with, you have to be within the 6 feet for 15 minutes or greater. Okay. Now, the way we have it set up in the classroom, there shouldn't be too many kids that are approaching you and closer than 6 feet, depending upon your age group. And if you are dealing with the younger kids, I mean, 6 for 15 minutes or greater during the day. Okay. And we're going to have to go through it kind of, there will be some that may be more at risk and parents may say, oh, okay, I want to keep my kid home. But for the teacher, that would be the case. The face mask that they're talking about, that is what the doctor's office are using. If you go to your doctor's office, their staff, including the doctor, at most is wearing a regular surgical mask, which is the equivalent of a cloth mask, with a face shield, and that's it. I mean, they have their If you're coming in sick, they may have a gown on, which is the same, be like a lab coat that they're removing, okay? Because you're not doing anything there which would get you in contact with aerosolized secretions, which is what you'd need the respirator mask for. Now the essential staff, what that does is if we become essential staff, that means even if you're a contact of someone that is positive, so the teacher then would still come to school. Not if you're positive, but if you were in contact with students that were, you would still come to school. Oh my gosh, what does that mean? Well, that means that we have a lot of businesses that are essential. You come back to work as you would normally, even planning, doing your face masks, your shield, washing your hands, but even being extra precautious, which we should be doing that all the time anyway. But then when you're not at work, you're returning to quarantine at home. Okay? I mean, I'm just dealing with this with a case that was happening in a business last week. So reminding people that they're still in quarantine when they're not at work. So, I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing blank faces like, what? Yeah, you when you leave work, you're supposed to go home, again, then stay to your room or the restroom. And anytime you're not in those two rooms, you're wearing your mask and you're not supposed to go to the grocery store. I know. But that is what they would call for an essential worker when they were in contact with someone that was positive. And then the rapid test kits they're talking about. Now, I've had schools and even in ours talk about, well, can we start doing testing in our schools? The local health departments do not want us doing that. There's various reasons. One of the biggest ones is right now when we are doing testing, that's done by just local various health departments. So everybody has their own policies and protocols of where they send them out to be read. Okay, so they test you at site, then they send that test out. Some are being read at Mayo Clinic in Wisconsin, some are going to Rochester, Minnesota, some are going down to Georgia. The results, which actually only take a couple hours, a couple minutes, but it's taking, 2 days at best, unless you're a hospitalized person. At worst, it's taking 5 to 7 days, which is unacceptable to wait that long to get a result. So you're supposed to quarantine after you get tested. But some people are getting tested. They're like, well, maybe I was in contact with someone, not that they have symptoms. And you are still getting positives from people from that. But they're not quarantining after their testing. And so waiting that length of time is not very helpful. And then you're going to have questions from students who are like, well, I was a contact, but I just went and got tested and my test was negative. That doesn't matter. That test was a snapshot of that moment in time. The incubation period is 2 to 14 days. So if on day 7 you were tested, well, if you don't have the full-blown disease, you're not going to show up positive. But you could show up positive still later in that 14 days as the disease becomes active after you're done with incubation. Just so students are aware of that. The testing does not matter on the time you're supposed to quarantine. So, okay, no, I'm done. Sorry about that, Dr. Opera, but back to you.
Okay, thank you. So we had a question, how does this work for county schools not doing cohorts? And at this point, I would say we have enough to worry about, worrying about our own school district, so I'm not going to worry about the other county schools. But this morning, according to the county superintendents, all of our plans look very similar, if not nearly identical. So
I think my point was just, we've been in touch with the rest of the other county schools because we do want to align. I didn't know if there was a county protocol for high schools and that type of quarantine issue, because as I heard Nurse Jackie refer to it, the quarantine period and exposure and testing, that's all very important. I didn't know, but her qualifying statement was that if they were in cohorts. Well, all the high schools in Wapaka County, we've got kids that are being allowed to go to other classrooms. So can you clarify, does it make a difference if they are? Tell me more.
But they are 6 foot distancing
Right.
when they're in those classrooms.
Correct. I'm not sure if having a cohort makes a difference or if it doesn't.
Okay, now my mic is off. What the plan is, okay, now when you have someone, for the most part, schools are, and I have not seen the fully fleshed out plan, but I know we're kind of talking this through. The students are going to be wearing masks into the building, on their buses if they're on buses, cars they're not going to, but when they get out and they're going they wear their masks. They wear it through the building to their classrooms. They're staying in kind of cohort groups instead of the full student body. They can take their masks off in the classroom. This is especially important at the elementary school grades, where the compliance of keeping that on would be a problem. And then when they were going back into the halls, either to go to the restroom or going to lunches or this and that, they're putting the mask back on. Now, hallways, the plan is and I'm not sure that these are just fleshing things out, one side, other side, as a passing lane. So generally you shouldn't be talking and looking at people as you're walking. Even when you walk in the grocery store, you pass by people with masks on and they may be positive. And they may not know it yet. That's why you don't look and talk to people face to face. You kind of turn away. And that's what we're to encourage, just with hygiene practices of COVID, which is a little different than, more advanced than regular hygiene practices. You're walking separate directions and you are not looking at people who are passing. You're keeping your face averted. Okay. Now, this stuff will all be written down, and I can send out information that I had talked to the previous things about the quarantine, essential staff, and rapid test. I know some of you said, well, there's a lot to come at you at one time, some of these things. And you will have parents that are going to ask you these questions. So it's nice to have the answers right away. And you can even pull up, whatever I typed up. But does that answer it, Dan?
I think so, in that if we are not necessarily staying with the same 25 kids all day, because high school kids are being allowed to intermix and go to their classes, they're doing the protective gear as far as walking in the halls with masks, if that's where we end up, and somebody in their classroom is diagnosed with COVID, we've practiced social distancing, that person is quarantined, and then we continue to move forward and keep.
But if there's any need for contact tracing, Dan, you do know who that person has been in class with.
Okay.
You know their schedule and all the rosters. So if there is any need to communicate with people, you know who they've been.
Okay. I hate to say this has been coming up in the local health departments, because it did come down from Wisconsin Department of Public Health. So plan was, especially you think about how many times we are in places around other people, you're encouraged to wear masks and encouraged to keep that 6 feet distance between people. But many times, again, we're passing people, we may not be quite 6 feet, but we don't know everybody that we are in contact with. Especially if you're going, to the grocery store to pick something up. Well, we thought we were okay with masks, but now the local health departments are saying contacts are still people that were within that 6 feet for 15 minutes or greater. And that is cumulative during the day. Not just, if you do 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, that's 15 minutes. And they're saying even if you have masks on. So what will that mean for us? They haven't given the schools further direction on this. So we can only work with what we've been given. What we've been given, your plan is fine, because that was the direction in education forward that we were given. Okay? Despite the fact that new things may come out, unless it's coming from DPI and your local health department, you're following the guidelines that you were given. So what you have with if your high school students are always keeping their masks on, well, that won't be an issue, because that was the information we were given.
Hey, Jackie, what's the changes if kids aren't keeping their masks on?
Say that again. I heard aren't keeping.
What changes if students don't wear masks at all? They don't come in with masks. They don't ever wear masks.
Now, and that has to be a policy on the school. I haven't had too many schools yet that have reopened and discussed their policy. And actually had to enforce their policy. The ones that I have, are dealing with your at-risk children, people that are most likely to not follow rules and directions. They were the ones that did absolutely needs some specialized, and that was one of the things. If you are, no problem. If kids take their mask off and you need to redirect them and they follow the redirection, that's fine. But if they repeatedly do not follow the direction or they give you difficulty, then they're not going to be allowed to come to school and they have to go home. How much period of time, that has to be your decision, until work with parents. That is what I've seen. Is that what we're going to do? I don't know. You know, and if you decide that that is something you want to do, you're going to have to well document it, which is time consuming. But that's what I have seen happen. I have not heard especially as things are usually coming about by county, like Dr. Opper was saying, the entire part of Waupaca County, the schools are attempting to have similar, if not the same plans. You know, because there may be differences in building, you can't do certain things. They're trying to have similar plans so that we can have that unified front so that we don't have parents, and nobody's going to be completely happy coming to us and giving us a hard time. So that will be a decision, and that might be one of the things you want to talk to. What unified plan are we going to come up with if we have kids that do not? And I think most kids will follow it. The ones that won't are coming from families whose parents don't support it. And you know we're going to have those. I've heard people, I'm not wearing a mask. Well, then your kids aren't going to wear a mask. Because they hear you say that. Adamant. And they want to be like mom and dad. So.
Yeah, we've had parents say they're going to move away if their children have to wear a mask. The survey was clear in opposition to masks for the school district of Manawa. Right now in the county, none of the county schools are having students required to wear masks. It's voluntary. Almost all of them have a staff mandate to wear masks when you're with children and or your colleagues. Pittsville is not in our county, but is in the CWC, and we're in communication with our CWC schools. They're the only ones I know of right now. Their staff and students are required to wear masks. That's what I know right now, so.
And I wonder parents aren't going to like it, but if we did the best we could with, you don't have to wear masks once you're in your classrooms, but when in the public where you know you are going to be closer than you should be and it's hard to stay aware, I wonder how many parents would actually not send their kids to school or move. Because truly, I don't think that that's really a rough thing to say. If when you're outside of your classroom moving around the school, especially in the large group areas, but it's up to you. And I know there's no right answer, and I'll support whatever decisions you guys make.
Yeah, well, it's a team recommendation, and it has to be vetted by our attorney and DHS and the liability insurance company and so forth. So we do know that we were unable to get cooperation for the 1-hour graduation that we were planning to do in person, and thus we are now unable to do the in-person graduation. So Waiwiga had their graduation on Friday night. They had full compliance, no complaints leading up to it, and everybody complied. Everybody kept social distance, wore their mask, and they had no issues. The principal, I think her words were, it was flawless. So I was happy for them. I haven't had any communications directed to me, but a number of parents and students have communicated with Dan how disappointed they are that. But
I also received emails of thank you for protecting our, at least 3 or 4 of those as well, saying thank you for protecting our children, and it was a brilliant plan. So I think, again, it demonstrates that we are divided in this community. Melanie, do you think that JED would come as far as to say for Waupaca County schools that a mask mandate for students, as Jackie described, coming off the bus or in the hallways is imminent or even feasible? Do you think that's something that he would put forth?
Right now, he was saying he'd recommend that it be in all our plans. He wasn't ready to commit to an order. You know, he's reluctant, as are many state officials, because most of them ended up in lawsuits, which just created further division and cost money and took time. His approach was still hoping to partner with the county schools on a joint educational program that, by explaining the importance of it and how helpful it is, that by working together, it would make a more successful reopening program. So he felt that working in that positive fashion would be more productive than an order, which seems to create people bristle at the idea of being told they must do something instead of inviting people to join together in a positive way. Not sure how that'll work. We have been trying to get the word out about how helpful it would be. Jackie, I know you did some research on masks. We had a question about masks, safety. Can people die from wearing a mask? That sort of thing, or face covering. Can it create long-term health impacts? What is the research telling us?
Masks that we're being asked to wear are regular cloth masks, surgical masks, any of the masks that we're using. None of them would cause a burden on your respiratory system. The N95 mask, which has to be fitted, can and does cause a burden on the respiratory system, and you should be have a pulmonary evaluation when you're wearing them. That your doctor checks you out and finds your pulmonary system to be able to tolerate the N95 mask. We won't be using those. Masks, as I said, we're using are regular surgical or cloth face mask types. With those, there are still people with asthma that may have some difficulties. But looking at the Asthma and Allergy Association, there's none of those individuals that are well controlled who will have issues. The ones who may have issues would be someone who does have uncontrolled asthma, in which case, because of the situation, they would probably best not be in school or in these situations until they do get it under control. So that might be something that we need to ask our asthma students and send out a letter to those students. We have those students in the list prior to school, like the week before school, to remind them to be aware of that. They need to call their physician and keep on top of these things. Additionally, if someone does have an issue, they were talking about what about our staff? Staff too should be aware. And asthma is about the only condition that I could see that might be affected by a cloth mask, other than just the discomfort of it if they don't like it. Find a different mask. I mean, there are different and better masks if they find a mask uncomfortable. There's no other condition that might be agitated or made worse by wearing a cloth mask.
Okay, and then last time we talked, there was some lengthy discussion about calibration of thermometers, and if you just want to give the group a report out on.
I'm just looking, who is in this group? Is it just staff?
No, this is our whole community committee. So,
okay, all right. It's always good, for our staff to have the answers readily available when you have people speak to you. So I mean, I can send this out as an email to you also. When we look at thermometers, and as we know thermometers, we're doing this. It is a recommendation. There's just as much research out there that temperature taking is not necessarily the most accurate way because we're going to miss several with temperature taking. Now, that doesn't invalidate the reason to take temperatures. It's just that symptoms are even a better method for checking. It's just that especially when you're dealing with young people, they are poor historians. They don't necessarily always pick up when they don't feel well. And the first sign that they aren't feeling well is when somebody looks at them and says, wow, boy, your eyes look tired. You look like you just want to put your head on the desk. And that's just the nature of children. For calibrating thermometers, there is no standard of practice for that. We take all our guidelines as public schools from CDC, well, DPI, CDC, OSHA, I mean, all the government, FDA, government facilities. And I even say when we send out information sheets on products to use for different ailments or difficulties, we need to follow FDA protocols and have those items on there you can list. But that doesn't mean that parents and families can't use other things. It's just that as a public school, we cannot be seen to be promoting anything but those items, if that makes sense. So in anything that we say, we have to follow research-based policy or those institutions and guidance that comes from CDC, DPI, Department of Public Health, and such. So as we do not have anything, no standard of care for calibrating thermometers, we will not be doing so. But I welcome the questions because at least I can give you a thorough answer of why we're doing this and why we make these decisions.
Thanks, and I thought it would be helpful for the whole group since it was posed at our last group meeting. I thought it would be helpful to just make sure everybody had the answer to that. Then since last we met, I wanted to just share a couple of other things. So back to sharing again here real quick, and feel free to post questions. But since last we met, Dave Anderson is at the WIAA. I do believe the WIAA Board of Controls met today. And a program that has gained some attention across the state is a proposal put forward by CISA 3. And that CISA is suggesting that all sports begin on or after the winter break in January, and that all the sports seasons be shortened. So you have your winter sports in January. You have your fall sports in March, so early to late spring, so to speak. And then you have your spring sports that start in late spring and go into the summer. So every season would be condensed. That's what they're suggesting. And I just bring this forward because in our plan, we were going with whatever WIAA recommended. And this is quite new. So I do believe that our athletic director got it out to coaches today just to familiarize people with the potential of this. And then we're waiting to hear from the WIAA Board of Controls to see if they in fact might move forward with something like the CISA 3 plan. We're thinking we're going to hear something maybe later today or even tomorrow on that. So I just, in case all of a sudden you see that our plan on sports has changed, we did say whatever is happening with high school sports in the WIAA, that we'd have our middle school programs mirror that. So that's still kind of the thinking, but a bit of new information there that you have not seen before. And then there was one other thing I wanted to show you if I can find it. Nope, that wasn't it. Yep. We'll go to the, always distracted when I see people walking outside my window. Still not used to it, but it's nice to see the kids out there. So we'll go through the presentation in kind of a quick order so that you can see what's new about it since last we talked. Much of it is just the same. Again, we're talking about giving parents 3 choices We're talking about registration time, asking parents which choice they would like to use, the in-person, the synchronous. And if they're going with blended, that would mean almost like a building consultation team meeting with the family to document exactly what educational arrangement will be made for the student. So it's really clear if you're doing blended, in what manner might you do that. So an example of that might be you're a high school student, you're taking welding, so you'll come in person to do welding in your individual welding booth, but your choice is synchronous for all your other classes. So that might be an example of what a student might do and what a blended arrangement might look like. There are some things that just work better in person. So there might be people who would choose that approach. No change here. I did start putting in parent survey information around the slides that fit. So right before the COBUS and transportation slide, I put in the parent survey information on transportation because the point is more families indicated that they were going to transport their own children, thus taking a few kids off the bus, which might be important information for families. I'm currently tabulating the face covering mask information from the parent survey, and I didn't quite get finished because we lost internet access for about an hour today unexpectedly, and that messed with my game plan today. Sorry. Well, no, that was a power outage at the high school, so nothing that could be done about that. But health room visits, we talked about getting the students steered in the two different directions, kind of assessing what did you come to the office for, and if it's the bumps, bruises, bee stings, you go one direction, and if it's COVID or other related symptoms, you go the other direction. We're still working on details for who's going to train our staff for summer school, but we do need to get that taken care of. Then we've got our CDC slides. I did update the 24 hours, which is the change in the CDC return to school plan. I did start to insert the technology survey information right ahead of that slide. High-level emergency drills. This was basically decided on by the admin team, so this would fit both buildings. For an intruder alert, we would be introducing the modified ALICE protocol. So that really is assessing the safety of your situation and then taking the appropriate action to stay safe. So we no longer just lock the doors and turn out the lights and stay put. If you can get away, we encourage doing that. And so there'll be more information going out to families about that. But we'll be doing a soft introduction of the ALICE protocols this fall. With fire drills, we're going to exit quickly and efficiently and then practice social distancing outdoors when we do the roster checks. We can have classes be 6 feet apart, and we can use our outdoor space to space out while we're making sure that we've accounted for everybody. In tornado drills, according to Chief Roseno, rehearse with your cohorts, make sure they know where they should go in the event of a tornado. If it were an actual tornado, he said, in that instance, forget cohorts and social distancing. The danger of the storm itself creates more imminent health risk. than COVID in that situation. So you would move into your shelter at the high school. They would go down to the basement as they've done in the past. And that's in the event of an actual tornado warning. So that's just high level on drills. Otherwise, nothing new in the academic slides. You've seen all of those before. We did add a slide on specialized services. So this would be any student with exceptional needs, whether gifted or students that have health concerns or special educational concerns, whatever. Those plans will be developed with the appropriate people, and then we will discuss with the families how best to deliver those plans that minimize risk to the student. So you see, again, a high-level summary of how that will be done, but very much, again, tailored to the student. Ms. Connolly put together some slides about our social emotional learning. We had talked quite extensively last time about the mental health of our children. So she talked about working with students and the strategies that we would be using. And school counselors, again, being key to training staff about how best to do this. There's been some training, but there will be continued training on that. And then how to do it in new environments. So a new slide there. And then I did start to put in some data. I wanted to we received 219 total responses in our parent survey. I'm waiting to get what was our total population at the time of the survey so I can do a percent. So we have the context. How many people did we actually hear from? It was about a third, but I'd like to be a little more precise than that. So, but there the parents reflected on their learning experience from the spring, which helps us understand what we need to do, and then their intentions for the fall. So you see that most families have already decided that they're sending their kids back, and about 11.5% are unsure at this point. The staff survey, I did not get everything tabulated, but that shouldn't take long. This slide may be changing based on the information I just showed you about the WIAA. And that's the end.
One more thing that I had to add, which when you said we had other people here, not just our school staff, I knew I had gotten more information today. So that just made me want to pull it up. Before I said it, I had to have the information in front of me. Just letting you guys know, otherwise I'd just sent this to the office staff, that there's going to be some changes with vaccines for this fall. We know a lot of families were not able to get in, and doctors are not able to catch up. We will have a different catch-up vaccine schedule. And as a school, we will not necessarily be in non-compliance if we don't have a certain percentage that are completed. We just need to have people that are aware and attempt to get in, because doctors' offices are going to be doing things as best they can. And then different ways that they're going to be administering, because even though we currently have people that will be available to come in and do the flu shots, will that be changing? So we do have a different CDC catch-up schedule for immunizations that I'll be sharing with our office staff so that you know your child may not meet immunization schedule, and we understand, and that's okay.
And I did find the final document that I wanted to share with you that you would not have yet seen on the 20th. So it went out just today. I had to check to make sure what today was. It is the 20th today. So a letter was sent today and to the governor, the state superintendent of schools, and the DHS secretary at the state level from a variety of teachers' unions. You see those listed at the bottom. And this is indicating that these teachers' unions are indicating they don't feel it is safe to return to school in person this fall. So they've written a letter from the unions, and that just came across my desk this morning. That was the first I've seen. We don't have a teachers union in the school district of Manawa. We haven't for several years. But I thought this was interesting because it's the first time we've seen the formal teachers unions taking a position and communicating that. So there's some large districts you may note here, the largest in our state. So we'll watch to see what else happens and what influence that might have. It could have some fairly significant influence on decisions being made going forward. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because we've been totally transparent in this committee about everything. So wanted you to see everything that is out there right now.
Did you see that, I get this from Dodge County, the Mosinee School District has had a positive case in their schools being open over the summer. The Milwaukee Public Schools have approved by their board of directors that they're going to start their school year virtually for all students. The Madison Metropolitan School District, again, will start their school year fully online. Virtual learning will take place at least through their first quarter, ending October 30th. Kenosha schools, these are huge school districts, include 4-day week for high school students. And La Crosse releases their tentative fall plans, again, with an alternate learning. So that's some big schools weighing in on this. Just saying that, putting this out there, this is what is coming. So things may change. I don't know.
Well, that's why Jed, made me put in that last, well, not made me, but encouraged putting in the last slide that said all of this could possibly change. So this is what we plan if we did in person, but we can't guarantee that we won't have to modify that or that we won't have to change to a different form of education. It really all depends on the trend in the county and what's happening locally. So, again, the more we can educate people about wearing face coverings and describing how that can really support the reopening of schools successfully, the better it's going to be. So, taking a look at things, that's kind of everything I've got. There are a couple of those slides that still need a little bit of survey information tabulated and inserted, but you already have seen those results in previous meetings, so no surprises there. So it would be going to the school board next Monday night for approval. And of course, it's shared with you so you can look at it throughout the week as I'm working on polishing it up.
I do have a question about the online school, the 3 options. Now, I know last year when we did all this, there was no live classroom things. If we would go to an all online situation, would it be like last year's plan then, not having the teacher live at their class period hour? I guess some teachers didn't, check their emails till later or stuff like that. And I was just wondering if they're going to be, at the time of their class period, be in their classroom or per se, no.
The intent now is real-time live for everybody. So if we close, even for a snow day in the winter, we're going to be real-time live. So every day when kids, hopefully kids are going to have their backpacks on their chairs. They put everything in there that they're going to need and they take it home. So that if we find out we're not coming back tomorrow, you have everything you need. Whether because you're not feeling well or because we've received direction that we, either a class needs to stay home or the school district has to close.
I know as a parent that's huge. I mean, I feel like it's a little more structured with them having to at least be in a spot where they have to attend school and not just whenever they feel like getting up and doing things. So for me, that is a good thing.
Yeah, in the spring of last year, the DPI gave us an attendance waiver. There is no intent, at least last week, Tuesday, when we talked with the assistant state superintendent, there was no intent at that time to give an attendance waiver this year. Now that could change if circumstances change, but they want us accountable for all learners. So there was the intent that we would be taking daily attendance at the elementary level, and at the secondary level, that's by the class period, as you would, traditionally do. But kids should be online, and the teacher would know if someone logged off. If someone was missing, we'd need to follow up with what happened to them.
I thought I'd chime in with one comment from an email that I received from a staff member who said that several community members were concerned about the fact of, so now the school district, a snarky comment, so now the school district is not concerned about school safety with backpacks because they're allowed being, are they not afraid of a school shooter anymore? I didn't respond back. I said I would bring it to the community or to our reopening committee so that way we could at least dialogue about that backpack issue. So
they're going to be hanging on the back of the chair open because they're in and out of it. They've got, they're getting out that algebra textbook or they're getting out that Chromebook or that iPad or whatever the device. So I would say you're going to actively be seeing what's in that backpack throughout the day as you're engaging with kids. So it's going to be harder to hide things. In the locker, you could hide things, because we're not regularly checking every kid's locker every day. Now that their backpack's hanging on the back of the chair and you're circulating and providing proximity control in the room, and they're, as I said, they're in and out of it getting their supplies all day, it's going to be harder for them to hide or disguise items.
sounds good. I just wanted us all to have the same verbiage, and I don't disagree with you that, having a locker, you can certainly, we found more things in lockers than we did with kids in backpacks in the classroom. So I think we just reinforce with our staff, and it's going to be a proximity control issue. So I don't disagree with you.
I did get a number of feedback and questions about how important it will be to be clear about what's going to happen if we have, positive cases, what's going to happen. I think we have to separate, people are seeing sports groups around town getting together. There is some assumption that those groups are school groups, and they aren't. Manawa Youth Sports runs independent of the district. They're not sponsored by the district. They have no formal relationship with the district. They do on occasion use our facilities or fields, but they have a contract for that, and they're not accountable for any of our procedures. So we should make a distinction. If they see traveling teams out there, that's not us. The only groups that we have that we're accountable for are the summer school groups that are meeting right now. And the kids have been phenomenal, as have been the staff, with their social distancing, their hygiene. Some kids are wearing masks, some kids are not. They've been respectful of one another. So we should make that distinction. There is some concern. Many people are commenting on the safety of our staff. Some would like mask wearing mandatory on buses, but that's going to be a Cobeson decision. We hire Cobeson. Their safety team will be making those decisions. I don't believe they've completed that process yet, but last I heard, masks were not going to be mandatory on buses. There is some concern about getting information out as quickly as possible, and that we are going to try to do so. Right after the board approves it, we'll try to really do a big media splash. Mrs. Flynn was helping me with talking with the folks who do our Wolfpack Express. We do that through the Wapaka County Post. They're our printer for that, and they do our setup. Doing a school reopening special edition just dedicated to this, because some people do really like the print version. And we'd also do a voiceover of the PowerPoint. There's concerning about cleaning protocols and sanitation protocols, making sure we have adequate staff to cover all of that. One person commented on, should we ask parents to send more wipes? We aren't going to be doing that because by law, through OSHA, you have to have SDS sheets. Those are your safety documentation sheets for each one of those, for each brand that you have. So it's much more economical for us to buy a large quantity of spray and refill spray bottles and use paper towel, rather than canisters of wipes, which are extremely expensive. So we'll be using spray, and then we'll have the SDS sheet on that spray. And I'm working my way through. And then just people wanting options. There are people that would like to know that they could, if they wanted to, have synchronous education at home. And we will in fact be offering that and helping families get set up with that. So I think I worked through. Go ahead, Tracy.
Sorry, earlier at a meeting today, it came up, speaking of the synchronous learning option, it came up at our BLT meeting that will the parents be able to choose a different option at some point or any point within the year? Just because obviously we need to get an idea of numbers for rosters and how we can try to do the spacing with the desks or whatever in the room. But then if, for example, a parent sends their kid to school and 2 weeks in, the parent is like, well, this structure is just really not working because they don't get to move around or whatever the reason is, will they then get the option to switch to the synchronous learning and, or, you know, staying at home and doing the virtual instead?
Yes, there will be a choice to move between. I didn't put that in the slide, but I probably should. Let me make note of that. But it's not like today I want to do this and tomorrow I want to do something else and the day after we're changing again. It would be the blended plans. These plans, you'd sign up and it's principal approved, so there has to be notification. But yes, if you started in person and then the person's health just wasn't good and they wanted to go to synchronous, they could do that, or vice versa. Jed did say there were 2 vaccines going into phase 2 trials with 30,000 people in the U.S. participating and 30,000 people in Great Britain, both looking very promising and both also moving into mass production that would be available, he thought, in January-ish, if everything went smoothly. So people could decide that they've been synchronous or blended and that they would like to come back to school. You know, they get the vaccine and they're feeling more confident, could come back to school second semester or something like that. So there are choices that way to move back and forth. But it would be kind of like enrolling in school. We declare what we're doing. There's some paperwork involved, and we know where everybody is at all times, so we can do our attendance reports and be able to report that to the Department of Public Instruction. I think someone else was attempting to ask a question. I missed who it was. I apologize.
I saw a question here about grading. I'm not sure if we've addressed that.
Oh, did
If
I
we go
miss
online again.
in our chat?
Yeah, if we go online again, will grading be similar to in-person education, so credits counted?
Correct. We're going back to fully traditional grading because the expectations will be there. Let me just move the chat box down because there we go. I missed a couple. So yes, we will be going back to traditional grading, which is another reason why we need active participation engagement by students. I see there's a question also on with the younger child, if they don't social distance. There are a lot of good programs out there right now, making it game-like for the younger child, using playful things like pool noodles to kind of mimic a typical pool noodle is just shy of the 6 foot. So in a light and playful sort of way, we can help measure distances and, you know, kind of help us remember when we're walking, if we hold our noodle and we, you know, so there are light ways to help little ones remember that. And we have not yet ordered face shields in the youth size. I did see a flyer for that at the end of last week. We ordered so far 35 of the adult size, but we were looking at that last week that we do need to order some of the youth size. But the order has not yet been placed. Let me just check. I think there's some more questions here coming down. Let me just look. Okay. One of the questions is if you wear a shield, do you have to wear a mask? And what is being recommended currently is, at least for adults who are going to encounter kids, is the shield is to protect getting things in your eyes. The mask is to keep from spreading the virus in case you might potentially be a carrier. So they're suggesting any kind of eyewear. If you're a person who already wears eyeglasses, you'd wear your mask and eyeglasses. I wear contacts, so I could either wear my glasses, put goggles over. We have some of those now because we bought them for the Alice program. Or you could wear the shield. So the shield's purpose is different than the mask. The shield doesn't do anything about the respiration. Good questions.
Ms. Stopper, are we going to do a little bit better job about just kind of telling the parents that somebody's working on something? Because those have been some of the community questions, what are they doing? And I'm saying there's a committee, but I think it would be better if it were coming from the actual school district, at least on the Facebook page, the What's Happening in Manawan Now, just to kind of give a quick update. Hey, there's a team that's been working on things, and here's kind of some gates and timing things, so that people at least understand that there's things going on, and because right now I think some of them really feel like they're being left in the dark.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with you. I think that's an excellent idea, and I can get something out on social media tomorrow that the committee's been working on something. It's going to the board on Monday night, and then people can get involved and can watch. I think that's a great idea.
So what happens the board meeting? Now, either the board can approve this whole plan, they can make changes, or they can not approve any of it. How is that going to, I mean, I know they take recommendations, but ultimately they have the final say in what's going to happen, correct?
They'll be the final stamp of approval. They can't change something that DHS and legal and others have told us we can't. So there might be some things they could change. There's not a lot that's adaptable. Policy and HR looked at it last week, the draft that you saw last week, and they didn't suggest any changes.
So the recommendations, things that are recommendations, they could possibly change. So if there's a recommendation that the students have to wear their masks all the time, or, say I saw something on the playground equipment, they have to wear masks outside on the playground equipment, that's something they could change? Or is that, I guess the community doesn't know if it's a recommendation, legal and all that stuff, we don't know about that stuff. So I guess the community sees it, or I see it as a recommendation that we can change these things because they are not told we have to do them, they're recommendations. So can you explain a little bit how the recommendation, how we have to do that? I guess I don't know how to word that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so far, they want to be consistent with what the rest of the county's doing. They are recommendations, not orders. So you don't have to do it. But then the flip side of the question is, if it's a recommendation to keep you safe, why wouldn't you do it? Is there a reason why you wouldn't want to do what is in the best interest of the health and safety of the children, your families, and the community? So to this point, they haven't suggested being more stringent than what we've suggested. So right now, masks for staff would be a requirement whenever staff are with children or with their colleagues. If you're in your classroom alone, or like I'm in my office alone, I don't need to have my mask on. But if I leave to go to work with someone else or to walk around the school, I would put it on.
I guess I asked because, the survey is going to say one thing and the recommendations are probably not going to align with the survey. So I'm just concerned that parents are going to say, you want us to do this survey, you want our input, you want all this, but you already know what you're going to do and you already know how things are going to go. And I guess I don't want that for the school district. I want them to know that we are listening to them and that we're taking their words, to heart, and we're doing what everybody wants, even though you can't make everybody happy. But I guess that's my biggest concern.
Good point. And that's why there is a slide which will have the mask survey results in it. So they know we're aware of their feelings. But we're going to have to acknowledge that even knowing their personal feelings, it may be overridden by the recommendations of others that if we want to reopen, it isn't in our best interest to do that. So again, we hear Jed hoping that we can do a joint educational program and persuade more people, help us by wearing a mask, help us flatten that curve. If you want your children to go back to school, the best way you can do that is by helping to mitigate the risk, bring down those case numbers. He said that at the end of last week, we had been at 6.5. At the beginning of the week, we were at 7. So.
And don't get me wrong, I completely agree. I just want people to be able to hear the answer to that question as well. If they do go back and watch this being recorded, that, it needed to be brought up.
True. And generally speaking, this board, for the most part, it's the same composition of board we've had now for several years with a few people switching, but not too many. And they started doing surveying several years back, starting with the referendum and things like that. And they took to heart the results. So when people said, this is our tax tolerance of 12 million, these are the projects we would like to emphasize, and some were on the plus side. These are the projects we'd rather you didn't prioritize. They listened to that. So this survey may be a little different from the standpoint that we know that there are people out there that would prefer one thing, and the health community might steer us in a different direction, and we may go that route, even though we know some parents may not like it. But hopefully we will explain well why we feel it's important, based on the research that we have gotten from the Department of Health, the Department of Public Instruction, and the CDC. So again, as we always say, we're not making this stuff up. This is not a Manawa thing. We're going to the experts, and we're doing what the experts are telling us is in our best interest. So thank you for bringing that up, because that is such an important point, because this might be a time when, even though we acknowledge the survey, we may not be able to give everyone what they wanted. Other questions, concerns? Several of you did send me what you gathered, feedback from family, friends, and thank you for doing that. And so I've been going through that and kind of using it as a checklist to make sure there's a slide about that in the presentation, or that I, add more information if necessary on a slide. So at this time, I wanted to ask the question, do we need another meeting? This was an advisory committee. It's going to the board next Monday night. Generally speaking, I thank you for your service, and I truly appreciate the hours you've been willing to put in on this, and for going out there and talking to family and friends and neighbors. And then we'd really wrap up the function of the group. So what I'd want to hear from this group, is there anything left unsaid or undone that needs attention before next Monday night? And you're all muted, and it's really weird. Go ahead.
I think the only thing that I guess I still have a little bit of concern with, for especially the parents that are way out here in the country and everything, is understanding Cobuson's plan. And I know you say they're still working on it, so I guess as long as maybe once you get that, you just kind of let the committee know that that's been updated in the slides so that, we could kind of take a look at that.
You bet. I don't think there will be any changes this week because Jacob is on vacation. So he's out of the office unless something would come directly from the company. And the company safety director and the president of the company do work with Carmen O'Brien directly. So we'll watch for that in case something would come out this week from the company in a general nature. Anything else? Well, I'm really grateful to all of you. Thank you so much again for taking time, especially when the weather has gotten so much nicer and you could be outdoors enjoying the beautiful evening. I do appreciate you taking the time to do this. I will keep that slideshow updated. You will continue to see that live and changes. I can send emails to you. If you would continue to be a conduit out to community members, when you see people, share what you know. If you hear questions or concerns, please do feel free to stay in contact with me about those. We do want to get this out and we want it to be as positive as possible and as responsive as possible to our community. So have a great evening, everybody, and thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.